Silence in the woods is never complete. But sometimes, the wrong sound breaks it. And once you hear it, you can't forget it. It was supposed to be a quiet weekend. 3 friends and I had rented an old cabin deep in the forest. No cell service, no neighbors for miles, just us and the trees. The cabin itself was small. Wooden walls, a stone fireplace, 2 tiny bedrooms, and a screened porch that creaked when you walked across it. The first night felt peaceful. We cooked dinner, played cards, laughed until midnight. The forest outside was calm, and when I finally went to bed, I remember thinking how lucky we were to have found such a perfect, quiet escape. But sometime in the night, I woke. Not from a dream, not from any of my friends, from a sound. Tap, soft, quick, against the glass of the bedroom window. I froze, holding my breath, listening, silence. Then again, tap, tap, like fingernails. I pulled the blanket tighter, convincing myself it was just a branch brushing against the window. The wind, maybe. But there was no wind that night. The forest was still, and the tapping continued. Not random, not natural. A rhythm. Tap, 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 tap. Morning came, and I checked the window. Nothing outside but leaves and dirt. No tree, close enough to touch the glass. My friends teased me when I told them, said I was just spooking myself. I wanted to believe them. But that night, the tapping came back. And this time, it moved. From the window to the wall. Tap, 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 slow, deliberate, like someone walking around the cabin, dragging their fingers along the wood. I wasn't the only one who heard it now. We all sat up in our beds, whispering through the thin walls, too afraid to leave the rooms. The sound circled the cabin once, then stopped at the front door. A long pause, then tap on the door itself. We held our breath, waiting for a knock that never came. The next morning, we found something that made our blood run cold. On the porch, pressed into the thin layer of dust and dirt. Handprints, too many to count. Small, large, overlapping, as if dozens of people had pressed their hands against the wood in the night. But they weren't shaped right. The fingers were too long, the palms too narrow. By the third night, none of us could relax. We kept the fire in the fireplace burning bright, kept the lanterns lit, anything to push back the dark. But when midnight came, so did the tapping. This time, it was louder, harder, tap, 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 on the windows, the walls, the door. It echoed from all sides at once, like we were surrounded. We shouted into the night, demanded whoever it was to stop, but our voices sounded small, swallowed by the forest. The tapping only grew faster. Tap, 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 until suddenly, silence. That silence didn't last long. From the back bedroom, one of my friends screamed. We ran to him, burst into the room, and froze. On the inside of the window, on the glass itself, were prints, as if someone had pressed their wet, muddy hands against it from the inside. But the window was locked. We didn't stay to find out more. We packed what little we could grab and ran to the car in the dead of night. As we drove away, the forest swallowed the cabin behind us. For a moment, I thought we were safe. But then, from the back seat, soft, slow, tap, right against the glass. None of us looked back. I never went to that cabin again. And sometimes, in the quiet of my own home, late at night, I still hear it. That faint, steady rhythm. Tap, 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 closer, always closer. Nights in the forest are never truly silent. You expect crickets, rustling leaves, the distant hoot of an owl. But this night, there was only one sound: footsteps. It was late October, when 4 of us decided to go camping deep in the woods. The plan was simple: escape the city, breathe some fresh air, and spend a weekend by the fire. The first night was peaceful. We laughed, cooked hot dogs, and stayed up late under the stars. When we finally crawled into our tents, the forest wrapped us in calm, and sleep came easy. But the second night was different. That's when it began. It started just past midnight. A sound outside. Crunch, crunch. At first I thought it was an animal. A deer maybe. I held my breath, waiting for it to pass, but the steps didn't fade into the trees. They circled around the tent, deliberate, slow. I whispered to my friend beside me, "Do you hear that?" He froze, nodded. We waited, too afraid to move. The footsteps made a full circle, then stopped. The silence that followed was worse. Minutes dragged by, every nerve in my body screaming. Just when I thought it was over. Crunch. It started again. Another circle, but this time closer. I finally unzipped the tent just enough to peek out with my flashlight. Nothing. The beam stretched across empty trees, empty dirt, the dying campfire. No one was there. I zipped it shut fast, my hands shaking. The footsteps didn't stop. They just kept circling, over and over. By 3 a.m., none of us had slept. We whispered to each other, debating if it was a prank or maybe another camper. But the closest campsite was miles away. And then we noticed something chilling. The footsteps weren't fading. They weren't moving into the woods. They stayed right with us. Every time we turned in our sleeping bags, the sound shifted too, like it was following our movements inside. At one point, the steps stopped again. Silence. Then, a long drag, like something heavy was being pulled across the dirt. The tent fabric rippled, as if a hand brushed along the side. I couldn't breathe. When dawn finally broke, the forest looked harmless again. Birds chirped, sunlight broke through the canopy. But outside the tent, we found tracks, bare footprints, huge. Too long, too narrow, with toes that dug deep into the dirt. They circled the tent, again and again, overlapping, until the ground looked trampled. No animal could have left those prints, and no person should have been there. We considered leaving, but stubbornness kept us. That night, we built the fire higher, determined to scare off whatever was out there. But when the footsteps returned, the fire didn't stop them. This time, they didn't just circle. They ran, fast wild circles around us, faster and faster, until the sound blurred into chaos. We sat frozen, watching shadows dart through the trees, too quick to be human. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The silence was unbearable. And then thump, something pressed hard against the tent wall inches from my face. I didn't dare move. Then another thump, and another. Hands pressing from every side at once. When morning came, we fled. We didn't pack properly. We just grabbed what we could and ran to the car. But as we drove away, one of my friends gasped. On the fogged-up back window of the car, a handprint, wet, smudged, too big to be human. I don't go camping anymore, because I know the forest isn't empty. Something walks out there at night, and once it circles you, it never really leaves. Still water hides things. People say lakes are peaceful, glass-like, reflecting the sky, quiet and calm. But when you stand alone by the edge, and the ripples move even when the air is still, you realize something terrifying. A lake is not empty. It listens, it remembers, and sometimes it comes closer. It was late summer when my 3 friends and I decided to go camping by Hollow Pine Lake. The place had a reputation, a forgotten campground at the edge of the woods, half-fallen docks stretching into still black water. Locals whispered about accidents there, drownings, people who vanished without a trace. We laughed it off. We wanted adventure. The first night was perfect. Stars shimmered above us. We built a fire, roasted marshmallows, and told dumb ghost stories. The lake was silent, still as glass. But even then, something felt wrong. The silence was too heavy. The second night we noticed it. Footsteps, not ours. They came when the sun dropped behind the trees and the lake turned black. Crunch, crunch, on the dirt trail circling the water. At first, we thought it was an animal, but animals don't walk in circles, and they don't stop when you stop. Every time we held our breath and listened, the footsteps paused, and when we moved again, so did they. I tried to laugh it off, but my skin crawled. Around midnight, I left the fire to grab water bottles from the tent. That's when I saw them. Footprints in the damp earth near the shore. Bare feet, long, narrow. The mud still glistened like they'd been made minutes ago. But none of us had gone down there. The third night was worse. We stayed close to the fire, refusing to split up. The forest pressed against us, silent, suffocating. Then the footsteps started again. Closer this time. Not circling the lake, circling us. We turned our flashlights toward the sound, but the beams only showed trees. Empty, endless trees. Still the crunching moved around us. A slow walk, step, 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 dragging out the sound, like whoever or whatever it was wanted us to hear. By midnight, fear had broken us. We decided to leave, but when we reached the dirt road that led out, we stopped cold. Footprints covered it, hundreds, bare wet prints leading both directions, as if people had been walking back and forth all night. And in the center of the road, a single handprint pressed deep into the dirt. We ran back to camp, too terrified to think. That night, none of us slept. The footsteps grew bolder, louder. At one point, they came right up to the tent walls. The fabric bent inward as if fingers traced across it. Slowly, deliberately. One of my friends whispered, "They know we're here." I wanted to tell him to shut up, but the truth was, he was right. Dawn finally came. The lake glittered in the rising sun. Beautiful, calm, as if nothing had happened. We packed fast, too afraid to look back. But as we loaded the car, I glanced toward the water one last time. The surface rippled, though no wind blew. And standing ankle-deep at the shoreline was a figure, pale, motionless, watching us. We sped away, hearts racing, swearing never to return. But sometimes, at night, when the world is quiet, I swear I still hear it. That slow, steady crunch. Step, step, closer, always closer. The desert is not empty. People think it's just sand, wind, and silence. A wasteland where nothing lives. But if you've ever stood out there alone, with the sun burning your skin and the horizon stretching forever, you know the truth. The desert holds things. It hides them. And sometimes, it lets them out. It was supposed to be a quick drive. I was heading home after visiting my cousin in Arizona. My GPS insisted the fastest way was a back road cutting across the desert. 2 lanes of cracked asphalt, no gas stations, no houses, no signs of life, just miles and miles of sand. At first, it felt freeing, windows down, radio humming, endless sky above me. But as the hours passed, the road seemed to stretch longer than it should, like I wasn't making progress at all. Then I saw it. A van. It sat on the shoulder, tilted slightly, like one tire was flat. Old beat-up pale blue paint peeling under the sun. I slowed, hesitating. There was no one else for miles. If someone needed help, I couldn't just drive by. I pulled over behind it. That's when I noticed. The van's back doors were wide open. Inside was darkness, too dark. "Hello?" I called out, stepping closer. No answer. The air was dry, heavy. The desert was so silent it hurt my ears. I took another step. That's when I saw the footprints. Leading away from the van, dozens of them, bare feet, all different sizes, as if a crowd of people had spilled out and wandered into the desert. But there was no one in sight. I should have left right then. But something about that van. It pulled at me. I peered inside. The floor was lined with blankets, old food wrappers scattered around and carved into the metal walls. Words, dozens of them, scratched deep. "Don't stay. Don't follow. Don't look back." My skin prickled. I turned quickly, deciding to get back in my car. That's when I heard it. A door slam. I froze. The van's side door, the one I hadn't touched, was shut now. I stared at it, heart pounding. Then slowly, it began to slide open. Darkness yawned inside, and from it came a sound. Breathing. Slow, heavy, wet. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. My car was only a few steps away, but I couldn't tear my eyes off the van. Something moved inside. A shadow, long, unnatural. I bolted for my car, yanking the door open, slamming it shut, and fumbling for the keys. The engine roared to life. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The van's back doors were closed now, completely shut. I sped down the road, tires kicking up sand. My hands shook so badly I could barely keep control. But after a few miles, my breath slowed. My heartbeat steadied. The van was behind me now. Just a strange, creepy story I'd tell later, or so I thought. The road stretched on endlessly. No turns, no signs, no end. Just straight blacktop and desert. And then, headlights in my rearview mirror. Far back, a pair of lights glowed on the horizon. Getting closer. My stomach dropped. It was the van. I pressed harder on the gas. My car rattled, the speedometer climbing, but the van kept pace. Closer, closer. Its headlights blazed, filling my mirror, blinding me. I swerved, nearly losing control. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. The road behind me was empty. I didn't stop. I drove until I saw the glow of a gas station ahead. The first sign of civilization in hours. I pulled in, hands trembling, desperate for people, for light. The attendant looked up as I stumbled inside. "Long drive?" he asked casually. "Yeah," I muttered. "There was this van." The words caught in my throat. Because through the dusty station window, parked just across the lot, was the pale blue van, its doors open, waiting. I left that night, never looking back. But sometimes, when I'm on an empty road, I check my mirrors too often. Because sooner or later, I know I'll see those headlights again.